Alright, I think we are officially good to go. Hello, everybody, I'm Debo. Uh, you know, Witch Doctor Scholar kind of guy. Well, really, I just play a lot of Witch Doctor, and I really enjoy the class. But anyways, thanks you guys for checking out this video. What we're going to be talking about today, or just going over, is a lot of things are going on in the world of Diablo right now, especially regarding the Witch Doctor. Blizzard has announced that the Season 2 will be ending April 5th. It will be getting Season 3 on April 10th. A lot of information to cover, a lot of new changes on the PTR, so we're just going to go ahead and get into it. As always, if you guys want the written information and more detailed stuff, it's inside of the description, inside the YouTube link and chat and stuff like that. So if you guys want to read up more about the stuff, just go ahead and look in the description, click the link, it'll bring you over to Reddit or Diablo fans, whichever you prefer, and you can read more in detail about everything that's going on. But what this video we're going to do is going to cover all the final information on PTR right now, as it gets in close to the next season. Everything is pretty much finalized. I made an original video about the beginning of PTR, so if you want to see the differences in that, you can just look through the YouTube videos, you'll find that out. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. For every single different class they did inside the PTR is for the old school builds or old school sets like Zunimassa, the Mortal King set, Tal Rasha, they added a 6-piece bonus. Our 6-piece bonus has been for the PTR is increases the damage received from pets, the enemies. Whenever you hit an enemy with the Mana Spender, Acid Cloud, Haunt, anything like that, it increases the damage the enemy takes from your pets. It started off at 100%, they buffed it to 150, now it stands at 275, and at that point the pets are doing really good solid damage. I have to say I enjoyed it very immensely when they actually made those changes, because at first the build wasn't really that great. It started off with only the Zunimassa gloves being added, which made it so that if you wanted to run the Mask of Jerome, you had to use a Zunimassa Pox, which means that you had to also use a Ring of Royal Grandeur, and there was no room for Unity Ring. They remedied that by adding Zunimassa pants into the game, which is very cool because pants are one of the most flexible spots for all Witch Doctors. So now we're able to run Zuni-based builds with Unity Ring, which means it makes them, greater if viable. And then that, with the extra effect of basically using our mana spenders, it changes things up a little bit because I know Blizzard have been talking about it for a long time. To get Witch Doctors to start using mana spenders, because the way we were getting around, not casting certain spells and stuff was basically avoiding spending mana in the first place. So overall, I think they did a good job. I think it's a very solid set. It's also showing up very well with Carnival build. Carnival build seems to be benefiting the most from it. Of course, if you just like to run a Tiki Zuni a Zuni / SNK build, that seems to work out really well with a lot of fetishes and stuff like that. But pretty on point with the gloves and the pants. I know some people out there say, well, Debo, why the gloves? Well, in all honesty, I think it's okay because I've had it to the point where I got my fetishes to hit in a non-optimized build for like 200 million crits. Most of the time it's anywhere between 130 to 160, depending on what effects I have on what. But if they were to add Tasker and Theo, it would improve the build, but then it might end up being a little bit too much. And sometimes we don't have to necessarily have everything. And plus, if you're running inside of a group setting, you can always drop your Unity Ring and then run a Zunimassa Pox, and then drop the gloves and run Tasker and Theo. So at least in a group setting, you can run it like that. But in solo play, we necessarily don't need everything. I know some people are still not going to enjoy that or get very upset about that. I'm saying that. But in all honesty, Carnival was able to do 54. And I really think some people are going to be able to optimize it even better than that. Who knows? They might do 55, 56. But at least for right now, I don't think we have too much to worry about in that department. Moving on to the next thing. With the Zunimassa offhand, one thing they did do is they made a permanent extra pre-affix. It's like the 5th affix, and what it does is it increases Fetish Army damage between 25 to 30%, which is fantastic, because if you're using Fetish Army already, that's automatically a 10 to 15% increase in damage, and it's guaranteed this time, so now you can make sure you have all the other stats that you want. Also, what's actually pretty neat with that, too, is you can't roll dart damage and Fetish Army damage. If you want to get that dart damage, you are going to have to reroll that affix, I do believe, in order to get it. Or it could be a bug where they will allow you to roll poison dart damage, but the last time I checked it and I was playing around with it, I was not able to keep the affix damage on there, or I wasn't able to get it to the point where I could roll Fetish Army damage, and dart damage, but that could have been a bug. But for the way it stands, whether it's going to be like that or not, fantastic that it's automatically rolling like that. It makes you less of a headache. You know, especially if you're just starting off with a carnival build, or maybe eventually you want to build. I mean, eventually you want to get poison dot damage on the offhand because it affects all the fetishes. But I like that change. I'm all for when they start putting smart little fixes on certain pieces of gear. So that's something to look forward to. Every time you get a Zunimassa offhand, it's gonna have that fetish army damage on it. One big thing they implemented, and I already talked about this in the other videos, Belt of Transcendence. Long story short, it is a belt that every single time you use a mana spender, you get a 100% chance to generate a fetish. It can be fit into almost, or in pretty much any build. Nothing beats 100%. Don't even have to worry about fetish sycophants. You don't have to run the skill anymore. Passive, unless that's part of your build, and then probably you're not running the Belt of Transcendence. You're running a Witching Hour. But overall, very solid belt. Pretty cool to use a Jade build. I enjoyed it a lot, you know, to go around casting my haunts and stuff and getting the extra additional 15 fetishes. And then the cool thing with fetishes now is that every time a fetish is spawned, it gives you additional toughness. So that's pretty awesome. Very solid. Goes on the belt. I imagine a lot of witch doctors are going to use it. Maybe when you get towards higher end builds, or depending on what you do. I know high end carnival, high end tiki sack, they don't really use it, but that's okay. Because they really don't need to. They will get more damage out of using a oh my goodness, how do you say? They get more damage out of when you're using the Witching Hour. Next item is a Haunting Girdle. Belt provides 2 haunts instead of 1. It would have been really good with the Jade, but mayhaps. But I mean, even then, you probably still would on the Vigilante belt. It's a kind of a step in the right direction. But they would have to do something like when you haunt, you hit 5 targets or something like that to really make this item pop. It probably will be used early on in progression when you're leveling, or basically when you just hit 70 and you might happen to get it and it might have some nice stats on it. If they had something like, you know, increase your haunt damage by 15% on the belt, that would make it actually a pretty competitive belt. But in terms of what other kind of belts you have, this is a prime example of just the belt doesn't do enough to actually have any relevance. But I thought I'd talk about it real quick as I put it inside the little structure guide and stuff. Homunculus, fantastic offhand. You guys know Tiki Sack users out there that use it right now. That is actually a very good buff to it. They reduced the time it takes a summon dog from 4 to 6 seconds down to 2 seconds, so you're going to be popping off the sacrifice with Provoke the Pack to get the 20% damage increase per dog sacrifice way more often. And it's just going to synergize even more with the Tiki Sack build that's pretty much very dominant at the moment. So I was very happy to see that. And it's a good welcome change, and every single homunculus is also going to have increased sacrifice damage on it as an extra fix. You won't be able to roll it or touch it. And that one I did check, you will be able to roll fetish army damage, zombie dog damage, anything like that, or even roll additional sacrifice damage if you really want to. I think this is a great item because you know what, with that new buff, if you just get a homunculus as when you're a new witch doctor at 70, not only are you going to get increased damage, you could spam sacrifice a lot. That's actually going to do some pretty solid damage. There's a zombie dog every 2 seconds, and it has sacrifice damage on it. So maybe you don't have the greatest fetish army right then, but you can just roll 2 affixes of sacrifice damage and then just basically start going to town on low-level torments. So real good job on that one. I enjoyed that from Blizzard. They did a real solid job with that item. Little Man's Finger, it's a new item, works just like Tall Man's Finger, except it splits your gargantuan from 1 gargantuan into 3. And it's pretty cool. Does pretty good solid damage. I think you can get the builds with that into about mid-40s on the greater rifts, but at the end of the day, I don't know if many people are going to run it. You might be able to do something with it if you run it inside of groups. If you run it with Zunimassa, that will be pretty entertaining and on point, but in terms of solo greater rift play, I don't think you'll see too much of it inside of groups or when people are playing together or early on in progressive phase for Season 3 when you start off with a new Witch Doctor or just maybe somebody's building a Witch Doctor in general. I think it will have a purpose. I think it will do pretty well. Or in all honesty, I did have a lot of fun to play, but I always try to think in terms of like, how is this going to stack up with versus the other builds. So I did like a lot of videos involving Poison, Fire, and Physical, so make sure you guys check that out on YouTube channel. That all the videos are there if you guys want to look back into that. Next item, Ring of the Zodiac. Reduces the cooldown of 1 skill by 1 second for each time we use a mana spender. Pretty cool. Couple problems though. It's a random skill, so you can't control what it is. If the skill isn't even on cooldown, it could still reduce that 1 second by, at least last time I checked, unless they change it, So basically, if you don't have a skill that you use yet, it could reduce that skill by a second, even though you don't need to reduce it because you haven't used it yet. I think for other classes, it might open up some potential. For Witch Doctor, it's really not going to be that great outside, I think, Z DPS, but it's a nice ring to play around with, and I imagine somebody's going to make it work or incorporate it into their builds. Next ring up, Broken Ring of Promises. After 5 non-critical consecutive hits, your critical chance is increased to 100% for 3 seconds. Initially, when this came out, people were dropping all types of critical chance off their gear, running this ring inside of a pet build and basically going to town because they would have a high attack speed and more toughness because they didn't have to worry about critical chance on their gear. So they would be able to get those 5 consecutive attacks right away, trigger the effect. Pets take the critical chance, and then they have all that critical damage they built up and been stacking, and it just does monstrous things. At first, and if you guys read in the description on the, or read into the guide, which I have linked in the description, I told people I don't think this is going to go through because they tried to do this before with the pet gym way back in the day when Greater Risk first came out, and sure enough, they nerfed it. So you cannot, your pets, you personally as a Witch Doctor will get the benefits from it. So if you're running a build like maybe like Grim Reaper, I could see it working, because then you know you just do 5 consecutive attacks, you trigger it, and then you go to town. But it doesn't work for pets, so your pets won't benefit from it whatsoever. They don't get the 100% critical chance. So I'm glad Blizzard did that because that have made some really silly builds for the Witch Doctor, which is kind of just awkward. For other classes, we'll have to see how it goes. But I think this ring is just really meant for other classes because I mean, if you get that ring early on, you don't have to worry about critical percent chance. You can just build a bunch of critical damage and then just focus on getting a good attack speed, trigger your 5 attacks, then or do the 5 attacks consecutively with no crits, and then you get the effect, and then you know all your critical damage kicks in. So not really a good ring that was really designed for us, and I'm kind of glad they kind of fixed that before it got real crazy. Next set of rings is a 2-piece ring set called Focus and Restraint. Originally, it was how much of your resources was remaining would increase your damage by that much. They changed it to now where if you use a mana spender or a mana generator, you get 50% increased damage for 5 seconds. If you use a primary skill, you get increased 50% damage, increased damage for 5 seconds. So it's about 100% increased damage. That is currently on the Tiki Sack build, or on the Tiki Sack build, the top on PTR right now. That's what the guy runs. He doesn't even use Unity Ring because you don't really need it when it increases the toughness, and then not to mention the permafear. Focus and Restraint makes Tiki Sack a monster, or anybody. I mean, even if you're like running any type of build where even just like running fetishes and you're not running ticklings and massage, you're just using Jerome. If you get a Focus and Restraint, those fetishes are going to be hitting quite nasty crazy, because you'll always easily be able to trigger the increased damage. So it seems like Blizzard wants people to start using their primary skills and using all that, you know, the mana spenders or whatever. But I don't know how I feel about this ring. It's kind of weird. I understand they have to put them on both ring slots, because if they put it on one ring slot and somewhere else, it would just be bananas. So I don't know. I don't think it should be nerfed. I don't think if it needs to be nerfed. I think if you could actually run it and get it to work and do high level Greater Risk with it, then so be it. It is what it is. But for right now, I can imagine a lot of Witch Doctors going to be running Tiki Sack with Focus and Restraint. The damage increase is incredible, and it's here to stay. So, I mean, unless they do some last minute changes. So, I like what they did with it, and it's an example of when I'll say this. It's an example of when they just take an item set and make it worthwhile, you know. But if you do run it, you have to lose, you know, a little bit of survivability in terms of Unity Ring and other stuff. But if you just figure out a way to get behind it, it actually ends up being a very solid 2-piece set bonus. So, anyway, the next item is called the Ingeum weapon. Hopefully I didn't mispronounce it too horribly. Initially, the weapon, and I won't spend too much time on this, it basically made it so that you can get up to a 6-second reduction on all your skills. So let me put it in perspective for you. Let's say you have a 50% cooldown reduction. You have a 10-second spell. The way it would factor, you'd figure it would subtract the 6 seconds from the 10 seconds, which would make it 4 seconds, and take your cooldown reduction of 50% and apply it to that 4 seconds, giving you 2 seconds of how long this kill stays on. It should stay on this cooldown for 2 seconds. Like, you pop it, boom, it's right back up in 2 seconds. The way it was working was this. It would take your cooldown reduction in consideration first. So it would take your 50% cooldown reduction, reduce the 10-second skill down to a 5-second skill. Then it would apply the 6 seconds reduction on the remainder, which means that skill that normally should have been only a 2-second cooldown now is a 0-second cooldown spell. With all these 6 different classes all having a lot of things and certain skills where if they're off on cooldown it gets pretty crazy, they had to change it. And now it's been nerfed down to the point where it only gives you that, I do believe, a 6 to 9 second reduction on cooldowns after you kill an elite, which really is not going to make the weapon usable by any class. So hopefully they revisit this later, but like I said, I told a lot of people I didn't think it was going to go through, and they rightfully nerfed it, because if they let it go through, builds such as critical mass wizards where they perma-freeze everything and things of that nature would have came back, and it would have made things pretty much pretty sloppy. We're going to move on to the next phase here. We're talking about the Witch Doctor active and passive skills and certain set items. We already talked about Zunimassa. It's pretty much straightforward. 275% additional damage when you hit an enemy with your mana spender. Good change, good damage. It used to be 100%, then they upped it to 150, then they upped it to 275. Hey, I'd like to see Blizzard up it to 300, but I mean, that's not going to happen. Do we really need it to be 300? No, not really. Big changes to the Jade set. The 2-piece set bonus makes it so Haunt lands on enemies already affected by Haunt. It instantly deals 10 seconds worth of Haunt damage. Very good, very powerful. The only thing is with my gruff with that is that shouldn't be a 2-piece set bonus, because I could see a lot of people trying to maybe incorporate that in pet builds where you have the pants and the shoes available. Actually, the gentleman who uses Focus Restraint on the top end ladder, he uses a 2-piece Jade set. So you can imagine he gets 100% increased damage from Focus and Restraint, and then he gets Pierce the Veil, and then all his gear, Big Bad Voodoo, and then he uses Haunt as one of his mana spenders, and it does 20% increased damage. And then, you know, you spam the Haunt on the same target again, and it takes the extra damage. As you can see, it's not so crazy on trash mobs. It really makes a big difference, I would think, on Rift Guardians and stuff. So they need to put that 2 bonus to a 4-piece bonus and take the 4-piece bonus and put it to 2. The 4-piece bonus is Soul Harvest gains the effect of every single rune. Fantastic. That's a solid thing that any 2-piece build can use. If you want to get some extra damage, extra armor, and all the extra fixes, I think the 2-piece Jade for that would be great. I don't think it should be a 4-piece set, because like I said, to get that Haunt damage, nah, that should be a 4. This is just my opinion, but they could just move the 2-set bonus to a 4-piece and a 4 to 2, that'd be great. And then 6-piece set bonus is the dot time, because Creeping Death, remember, the longer the dot lasts, the more damage it does. Creeping Death makes it last for 5 minutes, but Blizzard had to cap it at 30 seconds, because otherwise the damage would be too ridiculous and Jade would be overpowered. They increased it from 30 to 40 seconds. I'll only say this. They messed up a core mechanic inside of Jade where I think they need to go back and up that damage, or basically revert the damage, revert the changes they did to one of the major mechanics of the Jade build, which was Spirit Walk. But looking at the set and not thinking about Spirit Walk, the set changes were fantastic for Jade. The problem is one of the core mechanics that made the Jade work was nerfed. So even though they made all these great changes to the Jade build, at the end of the day, no one's going to be running Jade build, I do believe, when they can run a Carnival, a Tiki Sack, a Zuni SMK, a lot of other fun builds that do the same thing, if not easier to do. Like the whole big thing about Jade, it was sometimes tough to run and it was high risk, high reward. But there is no high reward anymore, it's just high risk for like a little reward. No one's going to run it. But overall, the changes are pretty good. I talked about it real quick, what things they could do to save the set. Try to increase the dot detonation cap from 40 seconds, which they upped it now to maybe 70 to 100. If it's too much damage, then they can always revert it. They could make the 6-piece Jade set, remove the cooldown restraint placed upon Spirit Walk. That would kind of help out. Or maybe enable, after harvesting, a scaling damage absorption shield based on how many you harvest. So maybe you Spirit Walk, you go in and harvest, you get a big old shield, you come out, and it gives you just enough time to survive so you can re-Spirit Walk again. That might help it out a lot. But at the end of the day, if they don't fix Jade set, I don't care. I'll just run Tiki Sack, or I'll run Carnival, or I'll run, you know, SMK Zuni and have a fine day. But those are just some ideas I hope Blizzard takes into consideration, or we could talk about in the Witch Doctor forums of what they can do to save the Jade build. I never thought I'd be saying that. The only okay, I never liked Jade build. I hated Jade build. I liked it with Wormwood. Wormwood made it a lot of fun because I had some options with my skills. But the big thing I realized is that they spent so much time developing Jade and balancing so many stuff around it and fixing the dots, and some skills like Horrify got nerfed because of it. And the thing I noticed is this is like, well, you guys did all that work for the Jade build, and you undermine the whole build. It doesn't make any sense. Now, they said they are going to look into adding some item to help with that Spirit Walk, but I haven't seen it yet. And it's currently the 24th. They got 6 days until the end of the month, and then 5 days until the season ends, and then another 5 days after that, new season starts. So I don't want to say I don't believe Blizzard, but like to incorporate a new item now that does something in Spirit Walker doing last minute changes might have a big volatile effect on season 3. But I mean, it's not like people were taking it too serious anyway, because it's just between the Sever exploit beginning of the season and all the other crazy stuff. I don't know, but hopefully they go back and readdress this issue, because they invested so much time into the Jade build. It'd be a shame for them just to let it stay the way it does, and I would just feel like it just wasted everything else, or it was a waste of time. All right, let's go ahead and get into the skills. We'll try to see how many minutes are so far. 20 minutes. All right, we gotta speed through this because I don't want to go longer than 30 minutes. Hex. They changed Hex. Instead of Hex only hexing one target, it hexes every enemy within a 12-yard radius. They have a rune that makes it so that enemies take 20% more damage while they're other forms of Hex, and they also have a rune that heals you. Both are fantastic. Run Hex. They improved it. If you're lacking a skill and you don't know what to take, you should take Hex. It's a very strong skill now. And there's even glitch to the point where if you Hex a Greater Rift Guardian while they have their little minions out, or when they spawn them, if their Greater Rift Guardian is next to you or close enough proximity so that when the Hex goes off, it hexes the little monsters. It hexes the Greater Rift Guardian too, but I made a post about that. Hopefully Blizzard fixes it. Fetish Army, Fetish Ambush. It's the cold room for the Fetish Army. What it basically does is when you summon the fetishes, they come out, and each fetish does like 608% weapon damage. Doesn't really matter because the damage still sucks, and no one's really using cold damage. I put a little interesting suggestion inside the discussion. Just go check that out in the description. I linked the guide, but check it out. It's basically making the cold build basically like it should be like cleave should be the theme for cold build, and they should have made those fetishes cleave damage, and that would have been pretty cool, because even if you only get 5 fetishes, they all cleave with that cleave damage, and you can run a cold gargantuan. Hey, that's a pretty cool build, but you know, right now I don't think anybody's going to use that. Spirit Walk. Cooldown for 15 to 12 seconds. This ability does not start until you come out of the effect. So beforehand, you would Spirit Walk. Let's say you had Spirit Walk on 6 seconds. You Spirit Walk for 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, you kill some monsters and you reduce your Spirit Walk down to ready to again, because you have Grave Injustice. Every time you kill a monster, it reduces the cooldown of your skills by 1 second. So sometimes you could Spirit Walk into a group of mobs that normally would kill you, harvest them, and before you come out the Spirit Walk, re-Spirit Walk in and keep doing damage. They nerfed that. You can't do that anymore. That's why Jade fall off. It's a major mechanic inside the build. The couple of things I can suggest or hope they fix it about it is they decrease the cooldown to about 6 to 8 seconds. Allow for it to be affected by Grave Injustice, even if the cooldown hasn't restarted. Maybe it saves charges of it, and then as soon as it ends or whatever, it reapplies it. But that doesn't make any sense, because that would just make Spirit Walk work just like how it used to. One thing that could work is give a small 1 to 2 seconds of invulnerability when a Witch Doctor comes out as his effect. So when you come out of Spirit Walk, it gives you like a little invulnerability shield. That would help out a lot. Or what they could do is implement an item that increases the duration of John's Spirit Walk room for every time you kill an enemy under the effects of it. So while you're Spirit Walking, if you kill a monster with John, right, instead of being in the Spirit Realm for 3 seconds, let's say you kill 10 monsters, it gives you like 10 seconds increased. Something like that would be pretty cool. So I don't know what they're going to do with Spirit Walk, but until they fix Spirit Walk, Jade is kind of just shitty right now, and that's just how it is, because Spirit Walk was one of its major mechanics. Soul Harvest. Increase the intelligence bonus gained by each enemy harvested from 2 to 3%. None to complain about that. Free damage boost. Skill Rune. Language. It's been redesigned to increase your armor by 30% and reduces enemy movement speed by 80. This is where it's kind of silly. Beforehand with Jade, they had a skill called Horrify. Horrify will increase your armor by 100%. They nerfed that 100% down all the way down to 30%. Now you make another skill that pretty much will always be up that gives them this additional 30% survivability or 30% armor increase. I don't like it when they do things like that. They should have just kept the Horrify the way it was and turned language into a completely different type of Soul Harvest rune or something along that lines. Or hell, even just redo the Horrify. where we don't have the armor on, then change it some differently and make it so that the language gives you 60% armor or something like that, because Jade's really lacking in the survivability department. So the one thing that always rubs me the wrong way is when they nerf stuff or change things and then they basically kind of re-implement them anyway. It's like, okay, you already basically got rid of the Horrify because you didn't like how we always had it up for 100% uptime of 100% increased armor. So you nerf it from 100% down to 30. Then you introduce another skill that comes in that gives you another 30% armor that stays up just as much. It stays up all the time. So basically, you could have just reduced it down to 60% damage and changed language to something else, like as in like it amplifies the damage of all the spell effects on it by a certain percentage. You could have did something like it makes all the enemies hit by your harvest take 10% additional damage. I know we got a lot of increased damage, but you might as well. Or maybe when you do it, if you maybe puts an effect where it does damage, and when it languish, you know, if you harvest and the enemy dies under the effects of harvest within 10 seconds or something, it explodes and does massive damage. That would have been a cool skill for language, but hopefully they revisit that later. Haunt, nothing big here. They got one they added where it has fire rune. No one cares about the fire rune on the Haunt. No one's going to use it. It has more life regen. No one's going to use it. They fixed the bug where the poison rune wasn't actually applying the 20% increased damage to the actual rune, the actual Haunt rune poison. When it was actually casting a Haunt with a poison spirit, it wasn't applying the 20% damage like it should. So they fixed that. That's great. Plague of Toads, the proc coefficient has been reduced, so you're not going to be generating as many fetishes, but it doesn't matter because they buffed it to 15%, so it kind of made up for that. That's understandable. So that kind of balanced off. They nerfed the zero legacy cooldown, zero cooldown builds, where basically they were taking these old school set gears from level 60 in Diablo, making it so they could keep sacrificing dogs, the zombie dogs, infinitely, and producing infinite health globes, which the demon hunters would, Reaper Raps would stand on or grab them and get more hatred and basically go balls to the wall and start killing everything. It's an indirect nerf. So what they did to kind of combat that and not get people pissed off by nerfing the gear or removing the legacy gear, and this is mostly for non-season problems because you can't get that legacy gear in seasons. It's not possible. This is non-season problems. But they made it so that instead of giving every time the dog dies a health globe, they changed it to be called Chill to the Bone. It hits enemies, or enemies hit by the zombie dogs are chill for 3 seconds and take 10 to 15% damage. Or I'm sorry, they take 15% damage. It was actually upgraded from 10. It's 15% increased damage from all sources. Fantastic change. Make a zombie skill that actually is pretty nice. Now be pretty viable, especially if you want to build that cold build. And you deal with the whole problem with the legacy issue gear. Hey man, good choice, Blizzard. That's exactly how I would have done. Because I remember I was joking, like, if I was Blizzard, I would just nerf the zombie dog that produces a globe every time it dies, because in all honesty, no one was using that unless you're using a zero zombie dog cooldown build. So, hey man, tip my hat to them. Fetish Sycophants, this is probably the most fantastic change I really like. They upped it from 10% to 15% chance to proc a fetish when you do an attack. At the time of spawning, whenever your highest elemental damage is, the fetish will get that property. So if you're running cold, it'll be cold. If you're running physical, it'll be physical. So now you don't ever have to worry about your fetishes being like, man, I'd love to run fetish sycophants, but those 15 fetishes I'm getting, they're going to be all physical and I'm using a cold build. Well, now if you're running a cold build and you run the fetish sycophants and they get spawned, they will produce cold sycophants. So good job, Blizzard. That's called doing it right. So I'm really happy about that change. Very solid, good change. And hopefully they keep doing more quality of life changes like that. New legendary gems. Mutilation Guard. Gain 10% melee damage reduction. Melee damage is reduced, or reduction is increased by 1% per rank. And at 25, you get a 50%. When you're less than 50% life, you can move through enemies unimpeded or unhindered. So it's like illusionary boots inside of a gym, but it only activates when you're at half life. And it gives melee damage reduction. I think it's okay. It might be decent to use it early on, but still, it's a defensive gym. No many people really use those unless you're 0 DPS. And the new damaging one is called Ice Blink. Your cold skills now apply chill effects to all your chill effects, and that sounds weird. Your cold skills now apply chill effects, and your chill effects now slow enemy movement speed by additional 5%. So I guess it was weird wording, but you get it. So any cold abilities you have, it's going to chill the targets when they do damage, and then they're also going to make it so that any chill target takes an additional movement speed debuff. 0.4% rank increase for every level you get to increase the movement. So basically, after 5 ranks, that'd be 1% upgrade, which wouldn't be too bad to make the move even slower. At rank 25, you get 10% increased critical chance, strike chilled on chilled and frozen enemies. So I think the gem is going to be mostly used predominantly by like a lot of other classes, but I really do think it's going to have some nice potential with the Witch Doctor if you want to run a cold build. But it's only Season 3 exclusive, so sorry if you're not seasoned, you won't see that until after the season's over. People who are playing seasons like myself will be able to test it out and see how that goes. We're going to get down to the last section. Last section is pretty much the power ranking, or the ranking for which Witch Doctor's builds are the best. I'm just going to say real quick. Number 1 build right now, Focus Restraint with Tiki Sack. Zuni Carnival build, Zuni SMK. And then after that, it goes into Zuni SMK, Tiki Sack, Carnival, and then finally Jade. So, Focus Restraint with Tiki Sack. Focus Restraint is really powerful. It combines with the Tiki Sack, which is already very strong, permanent fear, along with 100% increased damage. It's a pretty much no-brainer, and they buff the Homunculus so that you can sacrifice the dogs more often. Zuni Carnival, already a powerful build. Now, basically, Zuni Carnival is going to be doing additional 275% weapon damage on a build that already has pretty solid AoE, and that was doing really well already. That's another good solid build that's going to be on the top. That comes in after the Tiki Sack build, but they're pretty close already. After that is the Zuni SMK, where you're just using your Zuni pieces and you're using the 23 fetishes and you use your SMK to amp damage up, and they're just running around stabbing everything to death. That pretty much ranks in about number 3. The original Tiki Sack without the Focus Restraints about at number 4. Original Carnival build without Zuni is at 5, and Jade falls all the way down to 6. I'm not saying these are set in stone, but I best believe, I'll guarantee you, in Season 3, you'll see a lot of Carnival builds, a lot of Tiki Sack builds, and a lot of Zuni SMK builds. That's just how it goes. I don't know if Blizzard's going to change things around. I don't know if they're still going to nerf the Focus and Restraint. If you need more detailed information about how those builds looks, I have it inside the description in the guide I have it inside the guide that's linked in the description. And outside of all that, if somebody, we're at, 31 minutes. I'll try to close this in the next minute or two. If somebody asks me, Debo, over the whole PTR and how Season 3 is looking for Witch Doctors, how is it, and what grade would you give them? I'd give them a B+. They would have had an A if they didn't sabotage the Spirit Walk with the whole Jade thing. That's annoying, but that's okay. But I think they did a fantastic job for Witch Doctors. I don't know about the other classes, but they really, whoever worked on Witch Doctor, they understand. They get it. They get it. Like, they get it. So they did a fantastic job on that. In terms of the whole leaderboards and how the Season 3 is rushed and all the stuff going on, I'm not too happy about that. I'm not going to speak on that because I think a lot of Calamity stuff is going to happen because this is a very short season with this patch that could have used a little bit more testing, and they're rushing it out, I kind of feel, and that's just going to, whenever you rush things out in Diablo, bad things happen. So at the end of the day, whoever did the job on Witch Doctor at Blizzard on the development team, they did a fantastic job. I'm happy with the changes. Hopefully they look back and evaluate the Jade build. I personally don't care for the Jade build, but like I said, it's just they spent so much time developing the Jade build, and it's been such a mainstay for the Witch Doctor class. It'd just be silly for it to go just because one mechanic got messed up. As always, I appreciate you guys watching it with videos and stuff like that. Hope this was pretty informative to give you a quick run through, even though 30 minutes may not be quick to somebody. But you can listen to your car, or listen to while you're at work, or listen to me in the background while you're playing Diablo. But now you got kind of what to look out for. You know what's going on with the Witch Doctor class, what kind of builds we might probably end up going into. And as always, make sure you guys check me out on Twitch and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, all that great stuff. And if you ever have a question, the best way to answer a question, or if you got something you got to message me, just come over to the stream, man. I stream regularly. Just come by. Especially watching YouTube videos, you'll see like a little banner sometimes that says I'm streaming live. Click on that link, come check me out, and ask me the question directly. I'm Debo, Witch Doctor Scholar. Hope you guys have a good day, and I hope you guys like the information.